Hi, everybody. My name is Leslie, a proud partner of Potatoes USA, and I am thrilled to be able to share some time with you today talking about produce for performance, the benefits of plant-based diets for athletes. So let's get started. Well, I work with athletes at all levels each and every day, and some of the concerns I have are probably similar to the ones that you have for your athletes. Consistency. In other words, do they do what it is we want them to do every day or maybe every third Wednesday or not at all? Adequacy, which is critically important to optimize health as well as performance. We have to make sure that our athletes get enough every day. Along with that, the quality of what they choose to eat. And this is not just about a calorie per se. It is, are they getting the maximum out of the food that they choose? Quantity, we know that that's going to vary. For instance, I work with ballet dancers. Their bodies are very, very different than my professional football players, but yet we have to make sure that the portions are appropriate for the individual. So customization is critical. Timing, and one of the things that I always talk about with my athletes and active people is parenthesizing their bouts of exercise. What do they do before? What do they do after? And for a longer duration activity, what do they do during activity from a food and fueling perspective? And if we really want to resonate well with our athletes, let's think about the words that we use. Eating for performance. Yes, everybody wants to do better in terms of performance. Eating for recovery. Well, that's critically important because if you don't repair, then you're not going to be able to do what you want to do the next day. And also eating for weight management or body composition for those athletes who have specific goals in that arena. So when we think about plant-based meals, what is it that plant-based meals offer for our athletes? Number one, affordability, and that's critically important because not every athlete has an unlimited salary cap each and every day. Number two, shelf stability. Well, that's important as well because we've got people that travel all the time. They may not be able to keep a lot of fresh foods around because they tend to go bad and they have to throw them away. Versatility, because it gets boring eating the same thing each and every day. Palatability is key because if it doesn't taste good, it is not going to be consumed. And certainly availability is critical as well. If you can't find it, you're not going to be able to use it. And many of my athletes, and I'm sure yours, are concerned about waste right now. They don't want to have a lot of waste because that is money down the drain. So when we think about the benefits of a plant-based diet and why is it that this eating pattern is recommended, we know that the Dietary Guidelines for Americans 2015 to 2020 recommends plant-based diets as one of three of the healthiest eating patterns. And why? Because people who follow a plant-based eating pattern tend to have a lower risk of cardiovascular disease mortality, lower levels of LDL or bad cholesterol, lower total cholesterol levels, lower blood pressure, a lowered risk of the development of type 2 diabetes, lowered body mass index, and also a lower risk of cancer. So certainly health benefits that are here. One of the things that is making a lot of noise and news right now is the documentary Game Changers. And there are some very interesting things about it. One of the most interesting being that it's got more conversation going on about increasing plant intake in athletes to see what kind of a benefit it has from a performance perspective. Well, that's wonderful. However, it is very important to realize that when we talk about eating patterns, it's not either or. There's a lot of and that goes into the mix here. So somebody can consume animal-based sources and plant-based sources if they choose to do that. But we certainly know that everybody will benefit from eating more produce across the board. So as we talk to our athletes about their preferred eating patterns, let's think about their individualized sports nutrition performance and recovery plan, as well as their overall health goals. And certainly, let's not forget about the critical importance of teaching athletes the benefits of adding more wholesome plant-based foods to their diet each and every day on each and every plate. So when we think about the state of the plate, it's not a pretty picture. We know that only 1 in 10 Americans is consuming enough produce on a daily basis. We've got some work to do. We also know that not every plant-based athlete has an optimal eating pattern. Now, you would think somebody would eat a lot of plants, but that's not necessarily the case even when they call themselves a plant-based athlete. We know as well that in some cases fruit and vegetable intake may be suboptimal, and also the intake of iron, of zinc, calcium, vitamins A and C may not be optimal, and that may be of concern to athletes. As well, if we have athletes that have shortfall nutrients, in other words, they're not getting their needs met each and every day, it can deleteriously impact their physiology, their physique, and certainly their performance. So when we think about a plant-based diet, what are we talking about? This is the logo for MyPLATE.gov. It's not new, but I want to point out to you all is that when we look at this plate, basically fruits are plants, vegetables are plants, grains are plants. Depending upon the protein source, that could be plant, and depending upon what somebody puts in the blue or in the dairy, that could be a plant as well. So conceivably, you could have a plate that is entirely plant, or for many of us, we could have a plate that is in the majority of plants. So fruits, vegetables, beans, grains, nuts, and seeds are all plants. When I talk to my athletes, I really need to think about the strength of evidence. That is critically important to me. So the recommendations that I make are going to be evidence-driven. So if we look at what we consider to be the macronutrients, protein, carbohydrate, and even certain types of fats, we want to look at the strength of evidence as well as the recommendations. So the first one is for protein, and the quantity here is specifically looking at what happens post-strength training as well as what happens across meals. So we're looking at protein at two distinct times. If somebody is looking to optimize their muscle protein synthesis, we want to make sure that the protein sources that they ingest are high in leucine. Leucine is the amino acid most responsible for muscle protein synthesis. So where do we find that? Whey protein, milk, as well as high-quality animal and plant protein sources. The benefits, muscle protein synthesis, as well as muscle repair and remodeling, and the strength of evidence is good. When we look at carbohydrates, and we have so many people that are carb-phobic or carb-attacking, look at this information. Carbohydrate needs are met over the course of the day. And you see these numbers here, they vary. 1.36 to 5.45 grams per pound per day. That is dependent upon the type of sport, the duration of activity, the intensity of that activity. It is not one size fits all. And so when we think about sources, fruit, cereal, sports drinks, if they're warranted, bread, as well as other forms of produce, other grains, dairy foods, potatoes, and other vegetables. We know that carbohydrate has a role to play in terms of replenishing liver and muscle glycogen to help the body repair from activity and prepare for what it's going to do, as well as supporting a healthy immune system. And the strength of evidence is good. When we look at the omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids, where the recommendation is about 3 grams per day of the combination of both the EPA and DHA form of the omega-3s, we know that we find it in many different sources, from fatty fish to supplements to plant-based sources, including canola, walnut, and flaxseed and hemp oils, as well as those nuts and seeds. The benefits, lowering inflammation, supporting a healthy immune function, and supporting muscle repair and remodeling if somebody is not consuming adequate protein. The strength of evidence is fair, especially related to the muscle repair and remodeling, but is it important to be incorporating omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids into the diet? Absolutely, whether it is a plant or animal source. And fluid, we know, critically important. If we look specifically after exercise, the recommendation 20 to 24 ounces of fluid per pound body mass loss. Those people that sweat more are going to have to replace more. We can do this in a lot of different ways, from water to sports drink, milk, and juice. And why? Because fluid intake is critically important for fluid balance and plasma volume restoration, and the strength of evidence is good. So what about some of the other things? The metabolites and the micro or micronutrients. There's a lot of interest in antioxidants. However, not through supplements, but through food. And where do we get the antioxidants? We get them in produce, meaning fruit and vegetables. Benefits for lowering the risk of inflammation and certainly for overall health. And although the strength of evidence is fair, we know and we recommend each and every day that it is critically important to be consuming produce as part of every meal. There's some very interesting research on the combination of gelatin or collagen and vitamin C, where the protocol is 15 grams of collagen hydrolysate with 50 milligrams of vitamin C. It is used an hour before training. We get that from gelatin, from citrus fruits or juices, and sometimes supplements. And the benefit is to promote collagen synthesis. And although the strength of evidence is fair, there haven't been that many studies. There are more that are being done, and certainly consuming more citrus is a recommendation that would be critically important to help to meet the produce needs each and every day. The third is curcumin and bromelain. Curcumin, you may know as the spice turmeric. Curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric. Bromelain is an enzyme found in pineapple. And we look at this protocol where it is a combination of both curcumin and bromelain. We do this through turmeric as well as pineapple, or in some cases supplements. Why? To lower the risk of inflammation. And although the strength of evidence is limited, eating pineapple also provides fluid and carbohydrate and the vitamins and minerals that are there, and turmeric is a wonderful way to add some flavor to foods. Another thing that's very interesting right now is the idea of the microbes. So here is my plate with a little bit different look. So as we peel back the layers of fruit, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy, what we find are these other substances that are indeed of benefit to taking care of our gut, our microbiome. So with fruits, some of the things that have been looked at are the substances ellagic acid, which is found in berries, coffee fiber, as well as polyphenols in berries and cherries, and also some nuts. In vegetables, we have a whole host of products to choose from here. These are the substances within the vegetables that indeed confer a benefit to the gut, helping to make sure that we have a proliferation of the good bacteria in our gut. Some of these names might be familiar to you, like inulin, or the isoflavones found in soy, or even the glucosinolates, which are found in cabbage family vegetables, and short-chain fatty acids as well. When we look up at the right-hand, the top of the right-hand side, here in terms of the grains, we see polysaccharides and oligosaccharides, which are long-chain saccharides, as well as resistant starch, which we find in potatoes, and short-chain fatty acids. All of these have a beneficial role to play in terms of taking care of our gut. In dairy, in particular, the oligosaccharides that are found in milk, as well as fermentation in foods such as yogurt and kefir, and the probiotics in those foods as well. And then in various proteins, we see phosphatidylcholine, which is in the yolk of the egg, the heterocyclic amines that are in various types of meats, as well as the nitrosamines and amino acids. So all of these substances, above and beyond the macros, we peel away to the microbes and know that there is benefit for the health of our gut and our microbiome. So what are some of the concerns for plant-based athletes? Number one, suppressed immune function. And that might happen if indeed somebody's intake of micronutrients, and in particular carotenoids, is inadequate. Increased risk for upper respiratory infection. And again, this relates to not consuming enough every single day, coupled with the energy demands of exercise, and as well, increased oxidative stress. So it is critically important to ensure that our plant-based athletes consume adequate caloric and macronutrient intake every single day. That's why potatoes are so fabulous, because they're easy to prepare, they're convenient, they're portable, they're delicious, and they can help athletes optimize their energy as well as nutrient density in the diet. And we certainly also want to make sure that our athletes are getting in adequate micronutrient intake as well. In other words, adequate vitamins and minerals. So when we look a little bit deeper at plant-based diets and athletes, we also need to pay attention to making sure that they're getting enough protein, both in terms of the quantity and the quality. They need to make sure that they are consuming enough of the branched-chain amino acids. There have been studies that have looked at soy protein, showing that to be of benefit. However, there has been less research done with muscle protein synthesis using other plant-based supplements, such as rice, pea, and hemp powders. One medium-sized potato, about 5.3 ounces with the skin on, provides 3 grams of plant-based protein. The average biological value is 90. And remember, we're looking over the course of the day, we've got to have enough protein in by the time the day is done. So we can do that with lots of different sources of protein. We also want to make sure for our plant-based athletes that they get adequate fat intake, especially the DHA and the EPA, those omega-3 fatty acids. They can do this through eating foods that have alpha-linolenic acids, such as flax, walnuts, and chia. The other way to do this is with algae. So we look at a compilation of the nutritional needs of plant-based athletes by type of diet pattern. The first is pesco-vegetarian. Now, people who follow this particular type of pattern do eat fish. However, they really need to be aware of making sure that they're getting enough calories, right? We know that fish is lower in calories than other types of animal-based protein. They need to make sure that if they do not get optimal sun exposure or their vitamin D levels are low, they've got to supplement with vitamin D. Iron deficiency may be a concern, and so indeed, if somebody's vitamin D and iron levels are low, supplement is going to be warranted. For athletes that are lacto-ovo, meaning dairy and egg, or just lactose, so they eat dairy but not other animal protein-based sources, the concerns in the diet are consuming enough omega-3 containing foods, enough iron, enough zinc, enough of the B vitamins, as well as iodine. From the sport perspective, we know that creatine and carnosine storage are lower in athletes who are plant-based. And so one of the things we need to be careful of is making sure adequate omega-3 consumption. We know that iron and zinc can be a little bit more problematic since the plant bioavailability is lower than it is from animal-based foods, and also looking at getting iodine through food sources. Of note, for athletes that choose sea salt, have to make sure that they're picking a sea salt that has iodine in it. They don't all. And then we have athletes who choose to be vegan, where they're consuming no animal foods whatsoever. And so some of the concerns could be inadequate protein or fat or omega-3s, B12, calcium, and iodine. And so from a sports perspective, iron deficiency can certainly have an adverse effect on health as well as performance. If somebody has a low bone mineral density, that can be a problem in terms of increasing the risk of osteoporosis, fracture, osteopenia. And if they're not in energy balance, then that's also going to deleteriously impact performance and health. And so, again, wanting to make sure they are consuming adequate amounts of protein, fat, the omega-3s, as well as iron, zinc, B12, calcium, and iodine. So when we look specifically at some of the micronutrient concerns for vegetarian athletes, the recommendations are as follows. With calcium, it is 1,000 milligrams per day. That is the dietary reference intake, both male and female. For iron, the dietary reference intake for vegetarian men is 8 milligrams. For women, it is 18 milligrams. But for vegan athletes, it is 14 milligrams per male and 32 milligrams per female, so significantly more. For zinc, the dietary reference intake for men is 11 milligrams and 8 milligrams per female, but for our vegan athletes, it goes up to 16.5 milligrams per male and 12 milligrams per female, and this is daily. For iodine, dietary reference intake is 150 micrograms. For B12, it's 6 micrograms. For vitamin D, the recommendation is 400 IUs. However, for those that have low serum vitamin D levels, they are going to need to take more, and most likely that will be in a supplement form. We look at a level less than 30 nanomoles per liter being problematic or deficient. And for potassium, the recommendations are 4,700 milligrams per day. So when we think about food sources of how we might address some of these nutrients of concern, here they are. With omega-3, we can use leafy greens, flax, chia, hemp, and walnuts. Now, not only are those sources of omega-3, but they're also calories as well. Iron cookware. You can do dual duty with that, iron into the food, as well as getting great biceps. Leafy greens, asparagus, tofu, lentils, sesame seeds, soybeans, pumpkin seeds, fortified oats, and black beans are all ways of increasing iron through plant-based foods. Zinc we get from pumpkin and hemp seeds, as well as chickpeas, almonds, cooked oatmeal, and fortified cereals. Iodine from the iodized salt, kelp, seaweed, prunes, lima beans, and raisin bran. Calcium from fortified soy milk, collard greens, bok choy, kale, nuts, and seeds. Vitamin D, supplementation if warranted if the levels are low, but also there are many of the fortified plant milks that have D added. B12 from plant forms, it's nutritional yeast, certain plant-based milks, the shiitake mushrooms, some of the meat alternatives, and some fortified cereals. Riboflavin we get from fortified grains, and potassium in potatoes, bananas, citrus, tomatoes, and kiwi. So what are the performance benefits of plant-based eating? Number one, higher carbohydrate intake can translate to optimized training, performance, and recovery. Secondly, if you're consuming more plants, and particularly produce, you will be consuming a higher amount of antioxidants as well as phyto or plant nutrients. Third, a slight serum alkalinity, which actually may be beneficial for bone health. Decreased oxidative stress. Decreased blood viscosity, which also means you have better blood flow and better arterial flexibility, so we can make sure that blood is being distributed to the exercising muscles. Improved endothelial function, also critically important for heart health. Decreased indicators of inflammation, and also will help the athlete to maintain their blood glucose concentrations during race or game day. So that's critically important as well. However, there is a tremendous amount of confusion about carbohydrates. Here's what we know, and we talked about this before with strength of evidence. Carbohydrate is critically important as a fuel source for moderate to high intensity endurance exercise, as well as repeated bouts of moderate to high intensity exercise, such as stop and go sports or intermittent exercise. What we know as well is that the connection between the glycemic index, or GI, and long-term health has not been established. There is not a consensus on whether consuming carbohydrate of differing glycemic index actually improves athletic performance. So bottom line, we want to get enough carbohydrates in each and every day and not be so worried about the glycemic index. But what's the controversy? The controversy is training with low carbohydrate availability. Does that or does that not impact performance in a positive way? Also, what is the impact of carbohydrate intake on health, or not having enough on the immune function? And when we talked about this issue of glycemic index, this is the controversy. Does it really matter whether it's a low or a high GI food? Does that significantly impact carbohydrate utilization during exercise and also for overall health? Another area of controversy is the area of gluten, and particularly gluten avoidance. Gluten is the protein found in wheat, rye, barley, and oats. The concern when people just take gluten off the plate is indeed they may be decreasing their overall protein intake. Also decreasing their fiber intake, because the gluten-containing grains tend to have more fiber in them than the ones that are gluten-free. We may also find that people who choose to do this when medically they don't need to do this may decrease their micronutrient as well as phytonutrient intake. And the impact on the microbiome may be quite negative. As well, those who tend to go gluten-free may compromise their carbohydrate intake. My subspecialty is digestive disorders. I do have athletes I work with that do have celiac disease, and they cannot have gluten. But that's a medical necessity. Just to do it because it's trendy does not necessarily help somebody to improve their performance or their health. So when we think about carbohydrate-focused guidelines, first of all, those recommendations should be prescribed based upon the type of exercise, the training, the intensity, as well as the frequency of the activity. So we want to encourage our athletes to be selective rather than neglectful with their carbohydrate intake. Third, we know that carbs can be consumed within a price point. Not everybody has an unlimited budget. They're easy to prepare. They are culturally inclusive, #enabled table, and they also can help to extend a meal. So our goal is to help our athletes strategize, customize, and prioritize their attitudes and actions surrounding carbohydrate intake. There has been a new and very interesting study, albeit a small study, on the efficacy of potatoes and versatility of potatoes during exercise. So this research was done on the use of potato during endurance exercise with a randomized crossover trial with 12 endurance trained cyclists. And what they did did is they found that the potato puree, you see that in a little plastic bag, was as effective as carbohydrate gels during cycling. The advantage of that is providing a savory rather than a sweet option to fuel on race or game day. Also to help to avoid that flavor monotony or flavor fatigue, and providing additional variety, choice, and offsetting financial burden. I work with a lot of athletes who are ultra-endurance athletes, and after a while, the taste of sweet they just don't like. So this is a wonderful other option, and could be used pre, during, or post-workout or competition. The study was funded by the Alliance for Potato Research and Education, APRE, and although interesting, the findings are not conclusive, should not be generalized to different populations, including particular sports or training levels. But could we encourage potatoes, and should we encourage potatoes as a carbohydrate option? Absolutely yes. So we think about the power of potatoes. First of all, they are nutrient dense. What do we find in a medium-sized or 5.3-ounce skin-on white potato? 110 calories, 26 grams of carbohydrate with 2 grams of fiber, 3 grams of protein, and 620 milligrams of potassium. They are easy to digest, they are easy to prepare, they are portable, and they are certainly convenient. Plus, we can eat them as they are or pair them with other foods. And we have a variety of options from russets, reds, yellows, whites, blue, and purple potatoes, and in many different forms, from baked, dehydrated, boiled, mashed, and more. So what about protein needs? Well, protein needs vary depending upon the goals that an athlete has. So for athletes who are in energy balance, or in other words, weight maintenance, what we are looking at is 0.18 grams of protein per pound body mass to stimulate muscle protein synthesis after either rest or exhaustive exercise. However, it's not just the number of grams of protein a day, it is spacing that protein throughout the day or approximately every 3 to 5 hours. There have been some studies suggesting that protein before going to bed may help to minimize that muscle protein synthesis decline during overnight fasting. And to maximize muscle protein synthesis when combined with strength training or resistance training, the recommendations are for protein 0.7 to 1 gram per pound per day, divided over 3 to 4 meals per day. Or said in another way, 3 meals with about 0.24 grams of protein per pound, or 4 meals with about 0.18 grams of protein per pound. For athletes who are restricting their calories, so maybe those in make-weight sports, we know that having high-quality protein can actually help them with satiety, so they don't get as hungry quite as soon. And the recommendations here for protein are 1.04 to 1.4 grams per pound per day in order to help to prevent that loss of lean body mass. Here is an example of the protein content of various plant foods. And you can see that protein varies depending upon what the food item is and also what the serving size is. Now, not only does this chart list the amount of protein in grams for a particular serving or food item, but it also lists the calorie levels as well. So we could look at something like our potato, which has 3 grams of protein and it's 110 calories. We could look at something like hemp seed, where a quarter of a cup is also 3 grams of protein, but 227 calories. So most importantly is that when we look at the protein content of plant foods, for the most part, an athlete is going to have to consume larger serving sizes to meet their daily protein needs than they would with animal protein sources. That's not a problem, it's just a challenge and something we want to make sure that our athletes optimize to maximize each and every day what it is that they're taking in. The other buzzword of this whole idea of interest right now is on inflammation, or specifically anti-inflammatory foods. That is critically important to active people because when you train in pain, it sends your fitness right down the drain. And so when we think of what the construct of an anti-inflammatory diet is, it would be half of the plate coming from fruits and vegetables. So things like pomegranates, berries, beets, tart cherries, pineapple, dark green vegetables, deep orange fruits and vegetables, because they contain substances that may indeed have an anti-inflammatory benefit. For vegans, using an algae supplement to get in the omega-3. Olive oil and avocado are the preferred fats and indeed may have an anti-inflammatory role to play, and also anti-inflammatory spices such as ginger, saffron, and turmeric. And you can see here it's kind of a revised of the food guide pyramid done in an anti-inflammatory way. We're also concerned for athletes when we're talking about things that may have a benefit from an anti-inflammatory perspective is the micronutrients of interest. So the first one would be vitamin C. The regular recommendations are 60 milligrams per day, important for collagen synthesis, wound healing, as well as immune function. And we find that in citrus fruits and juices, in strawberries, red peppers, watermelon, potatoes, and tomatoes. With vitamin A, the recommendation is 5,000 international units per day, and it's critically important for cell growth and immune function. And we find this in sweet potatoes, carrots, papaya, pumpkin, as well as the dark green, kale, collard greens, spinach, and cabbage. Zinc, the dietary reference intake is 15 milligrams per day, but when we talked about this earlier, we know that the need for vegan athletes may indeed be higher. The role of zinc is that it is important for wound healing, protein synthesis, and the immune function. We find it in almonds, sunflower seeds, and pumpkin seeds. Another area of concern for many of your athletes, and certainly for mine, is the cost of food. If it costs too much, it's prohibitive, it is inaccessible, and then it's not going to have any positive impact on health or performance. So what are some examples of low-cost produce? First, beans. We're looking canned beans, dried beans, or frozen beans, chickpeas, cannellini, black beans, etc. Canned tomatoes, they're available all year long. Frozen vegetables, use what you need, throw the rest back in the freezer. In-season fruits and vegetables, because out of season, the cost is prohibitive. Potatoes, salsa, spaghetti sauce, and bean soup. What about low-cost plant-based proteins? The top one, texturized vegetable protein, sometimes known as TVP, is made from soy. It is very versatile. It doesn't have flavor, but it takes on the flavor of anything you mix it with. It's a great base for a chili, for a meatball. It can be used that way, or a sloppy joe. Beans, lentils, potatoes, where again are 3 grams of potato in one 5.3-ounce skin-on white potato. Split peas, quinoa, tofu, nuts, and seeds. So how do we help athletes incorporate more plant-based foods into their diet? Familiarity rules. So for somebody who's used to eating a burger, maybe the first step is a blended burger, which actually is a mix of meat and mushrooms, and then on to the plant-based burgers. Stir fries that have veggies and beans served over rice or noodles. Smoothies that have fruits and or vegetables added, even potato added to a smoothie, as well as nut butters. Plants, and more plants. Chili made with more beans and less meat, or made with meat alternates, and served in a bowl or over a potato. Tacos that are made with meat alternates, made with potatoes, and even adding extra veggies, salsa, and beans. And I do this a lot. Potatoes and veggies added to omelets or frittatas. Delicious, nutritious, and fast. We also know that snacks are now the new meals. It's the way of life, especially for active people. It is literally eating on the go all the time. But the other advantage of snacks is that they tend to be smaller in size, which means that they may feel more comfortable in the gut for people who are active. However, snacks are not always balanced. So it is critically important that we work within the individual's performance and recovery goals, as well as their food preferences, to ensure the best portable on-the-go snacks are selected. But it's a great opportunity for more plants. So could you have potatoes in a snack form? Absolutely. Pictured here are on-the-go potatoes. These are potatoes with a little olive oil, soy sauce, and they're coated with panko and sesame seeds and a little bit of spices. Or mini potato pancakes with apple butter or with applesauce. as well as potato poppers. And here, as we think about putting it all together visually for our athletes, because that's the way they hear and see this information, the idea of performance plates. So on the left is an easy training day where basically 1/2 of the plate is derived from produce, that's the green, 1/4 each from grains and protein, those are the orange and the red, and then as needed, fats, beverages, and flavors. In the middle, for athletes that are interested in altering body composition, the plate to the left is for body fat loss, where still 1/2 of the plate is produce. A little over 1/3 of the plate is protein, but we bring down the amount of other grains to about 1/4 of the plate to help with losing body fat while preserving muscle. For those that are interested in increasing muscle mass, it's an equally divided plate between produce, grains, and protein. And again, as needed, the beverages, the flavors, and the fats, depending upon the calorie levels and goals. And then to the right is what we would consider to be a plate for competition or a hard training day, where 50% of the plate is going to be grains and other carbohydrates, and 25% each derived from protein and produce, and then adding in as needed fruits, fats, beverages, and flavors. So when we think about these wonderful words powered by produce, first of all, let's put the nutrition in sports. PED for performance enhancing diets. Let's equip our athletes with the knowledge on the why as well as the how to fuel. Hashtag fuels of engagement. Hashtag produce to perform. Hashtag what are you eating. Hashtag potatoes fuel you. And for more information, please check out the website, potatoesfuelperformance.com, for recipes, for resources, and information about potato nutrition. And if you want to follow along on social, it's at Potatoes Fuel Performance for Instagram and Facebook, and at Potatoes Fuel You for Twitter. And last but not least, we would love you to join Team Potato, yourself as well as the athletes you know and work with, at teampotato.com. You join the team, you sign up to become a Team Potato member, you engage in social media at Potatoes Fuel Performance, hashtag Team Potato, hashtag sweepstakes to your post or on your social channels, post, and then you can win gifts and awards. Always nice to see those types of things. And if you do have any questions for me, here is my contact information. My email, boncilj@gmail.com. You can reach me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also my website, activeeatingadvice.com.